And for that reason, we can't turn a blind eye to that. When we are thinking about building a family, which is under the relationship segment, we do have to make and we do need to have an understanding that there are financial implications. And so I would say having children, although it's a family decision, it is also a financial decision. And what you can do is start financially preparing for it.
Hello and welcome to the Woke Finance Podcast, the podcast discussing all things finance and all things finance related. It's your boy Peter and I'm with my co-host, my bro Jax. How are you today?
Yes, Peter, I'm doing very well, man. We're in the new year. Very excited for the new year for 2026. I think I was speaking to someone just before we're shooting this podcast, and I was saying this Christmas just went was my first Christmas as a fully self-employed person. And so usually like year on year, that's a time where you can really enjoy the Christmas and relax and actually appreciate the fact that you're having a bit of a break over the Christmas period. But the thing about being self-employed is you get to choose how much you work and the breaks that you have. And I think for me, the most confusing thing ever was the days because Christmas was on a very weird day. And
Mm,
so yeah, we're in a new year, and it feels like it's an exciting time.
I love that. I love that, man. New Year settings and all of that, man. And Happy New Year to you, my bro. And you're right, it's a new year. One of our last episodes was focusing on 2026 from a financial perspective. So hopefully our listeners have heard that episode and are using that to propel them into the new year. And if not, there's no time like the present. There's still a lot of the year to go left. So a massive happy new year to our listeners as well. We thank you for your ongoing support. For your ongoing support to the podcast, which has been going on since January 2020. So, Jax, we are now 6 years in.
Well, wow. Feels like just the other day. Wow, wow, wow. First and foremost, happy anniversary. Happy 6 year anniversary. That's
That's it.
fantastic.
Literally. Remember our first episode like anything. So now, man, massive shout to our listeners, wherever you are in the world. And we got a bit of a reaction episode, I'll probably say, but it's just a bit of news that we've just read very recently. And by the time you've listened to this, it would have been in the last week or so. And it's an article in the Times newspaper, and it was titled, well, one of the captions that was taken from it was, I was earning £125,000, but the financial stress was unbearable. Now, I'm gonna give a bit of context to that because some of our listeners, wherever you are in the world, might be feeling, wow, that is a lot of money. And wherever you are in the world, just to let you know, here in the UK, that is a lot of money relatively. I mean, Drax, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that probably puts you in the top like 10% or even under that. If you are on that particular salary, it does change every year. But let's just give a bit of a context. Matthew was a poster child for aspiration, having dropped out of his Performing Arts University course in Brighton at 19. He went into tech, going on to earn £125,000 a year by his early 30s. He got onto the property ladder when he was 25, eventually creating a small Airbnb empire to top up the salary from this day job. Financially, I did everything right, he said. But that stability came crashing down when the birth of his first child, Olive, in 2025. He and his wife, Nicola, now 35, struggled to keep up with nursery fees of about £19,200 a year. Things got worse when someone was born 18 months later and their childcare bill doubled to nearly £40,000. And at about the same time, they had to remortgage, and their monthly payments went from £2,000 to £3,200, pushed up by the fallout from Liz Truss's mini budget in September 2022. Matthew, 36, who lives in Brighton, said, the financial stress was unbearable because I had a career in tech. I was used to always feeling comfortable. That stopped the minute we had children. We were finding ourselves in debt every month. I thought it was my job to provide for the family and keep us stable. I felt a lot of shame. Hmm. That was everything, Jax.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
interesting. What's
Yeah.
your initial thoughts and feelings when you hear something like this?
Yeah. I mean, so when I first read it, I mean the kind of heading, I was a bit confused as to how someone who could be earning probably in the top 5% actually. So yeah, could be in such a financial calamity. It was very, very interesting. So yeah, Matthew, 125K, flying high, going to property at the age of 25. That's very early. That's much younger than the average person. I
Mm.
believe here in the UK, an average person gets on the property ladder at the age of 31, 32,
Yeah, I
33, or
thought it was
something like
33.
that.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
30s. Yeah.
in the early 30s. Um, so not only has he, got a nice income, but he's also on the property ladder. But at the same time, as you can guess, Peter, I wasn't too surprised because as someone who has been in the personal finance space for a while, I realized that income is not everything. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah. And actually, if we look at the one of the reasons why he says he was in financial hardship, it mentions the fact that his payments, even on the mortgage, went from 2,000 to 3,200.
Mm.
That's a huge jump. That's an extra £1,200 per month that he has to find. So yeah, I'm not too surprised at all. And I think in this episode, what we can do is kind of talk about how we can avoid these
Mm.
situations. And I think there is also a lesson to be learned here to really, really understand that your income being high does not save you. It
Hmm.
doesn't guarantee you financial success.
It's interesting just because on that someone who's maybe on average over the last, I don't know, 15 years they've earned £70,000 for example, and they're probably listening to this saying, but I wasn't in financial stress. I'm not like flying high massively, but I'm actually all right. I'm good. I'm not in debt every month. Um I mean, explain, and first of all, is that actually possible? Because I believe someone is probably listening to this and saying, "Yeah, I'm all right," you know.
Yeah.
What's happening here for someone that's potentially earning nearly double that amount of income? What's happening here? And I mean, you mentioned things like it's not just about the income.
Yeah, well, there are people who are earning £40,000 a
50,
year who,
40,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
that are okay. But it's ultimately to do with the formula that we always talk about on the Walk Finance podcast, which is your income versus your expenses and then your assets versus your liabilities. These are the fundamental foundations that you must really look at and understand if you are to become a success when we talk about personal finance. And often what you find is, yeah, a lot of high earners look at that one part of that formula, which is the income part, and think that that's going to be enough for them to achieve that kind of financial success, wherever that looks like. But then they also have really, really high expenses, and that's what I can see going on here. Just because you have a higher income doesn't mean you have to push up your expenses so high, so
Mm.
much so that you are quite close to the edge. And any kind of financial event or life event can cause you to go over the edge. And I think that's what's happened here.
It's interesting because a lot of the times, the more someone earns, the more it changes people's original financial decisions. So you might have had a goal to do some 5 years ago. You might have said, "I'm gonna, I don't know, drive a car that costs £10,000," but 5 years ago you didn't know you'd be earning £125,000, then you are all of a sudden earning that £125,000, then that £10,000 car that you wanted to get, that goes out of the window. You are now wanting a £40,000 car, and the sole reason why that has happened is because you started earning more. So it's interesting just to see, and this is psychology and behavior of money, how income can just really affect our behavior and take away us from our original mission, what we
Yes.
really wanted.
Well, there's a terminology that we've spoken about on the Work Finance podcast multiple times, which is lifestyle creep, or
Hmm.
sometimes we call it lifestyle inflation,
Mm.
which is often as people start to earn more of an income rather than keeping their expenses low and reasonable, often, even when it's marginal. people tend to increase their expenses as well. So much so that net to net, they're actually no different from the person who didn't have that high income in the first place in terms
Mm,
of net worth or net savings, etc. So it really does happen. And sometimes it happens even exponentially. What I mean by that is just because you earn an extra 20K doesn't mean you can spend an extra 20K. And
mm,
that's because one of the big ideas and concepts in finance is compounding. And
mm,
the thing about compounding is it can work against you. An example I gave in previous episodes was, let's say you have you buy a house, a bigger house, right? It's not so much just the purchase of the house, but it's also the maintenance of the house as well. Now you have to heat a bigger house, so your gas bill goes higher. Now you have more of an opportunity for things to go wrong in the house. I say that to say yesterday, I literally had to do some plumbing on my in my bathroom, for example. So yeah, lifestyle creep is not a direct hit sometimes. Sometimes it's quite exponential, and it can be even worse when it's more so a life event, which is what Matthew experienced. A life event such as having children, or
mm.
sometimes even things like bereavement as well. These things can really, really have an impact.
Shout out to the child Olive, but these are just real things as well. Children, all of these things, and we gave a car and a house as an example. Or you might want a bigger car, you might want a bigger house, but then things like children, you might want to say, oh, I want to send them to a particular type of school or have a particular type of education, which we know is obviously a good thing. But again, that's how it can creep in. We don't factor in things like what's it, maintenance. We don't factor in like what happens if I'm all of a sudden not earning this income in 5 years, because these commitments, well, not funny enough, but tend to be lifetime commitments, at least 10, 20 years, whatever it is. So yeah, it's really interesting,
Yeah.
and somewhat definitely extend some compassion. I know some people who listen to this saying, "Oh, you're earning 100 plus K." No compassion there, but it really does get like that. Now, Jax, let's break it a bit more down. How can someone, I mean, we've touched on it, but how can someone who's not just earning 120K in tech, but also it mentions here that he has a thriving or an Airbnb business as well.
Yeah. Well, I've looked through the text again, and I think for me, the thing that really jumps out to me, Peter, is that preparation is key.
Mm,
So I'm very much big on things like family planning. And I'm also very much big on not just focusing on the income element of that formula, right? I'm very much big on the income is great and is a great tool, but the part of the formula that we should really be trying to build over the long term is actually the asset column. And when I say the asset column, I'm talking about building savings and actually doing that properly. The asset column is not just about starting multiple businesses. It's also having, for example, liquidity. And what I mean by liquidity is having, we talk about emergency funds. In the last episode, when we talk about, managing your finances in 2026, we always talk about having that kind of pool available to you. You could call it your emergency fund. Some people call it a contingency fund. Some people call it their cash reserve, but you want your money to be in something that's low to no risk, that's available to you should something happen like this. And clearly, this is something that has taken place. Multiple things happened to Matthew. One was, yes, the birth of his child Olive, but also the mortgage. That's the big one for me. The mortgage
mm,
jumped from 2,000 to 3,200. And Peter, here, I think this is part of the lessons that I think everyone listening can really take, particularly when they take on liabilities, liabilities that can change over time, such as mortgages here in the UK. You should always stress test that liability in terms of interest. What I mean by that is if you get a mortgage and that mortgage is, let's say, 3 or 4%, stress test that to 7 or 8%. If that was to ever happen, even if it's unlikely, if that was to happen, can you actually stomach it? That's really, really important to do. And then also, like I said earlier, actually having cash reserves available. And then the third one is actually planning.
mm,
You know, I understand that not everybody plans to have children, and sometimes it's just an outcome of a happy relationship. But I do also think it's important to particularly plan for children because not only is that a family decision, but it has financial implications and huge ones, particularly if you're living in the UK, because those nursery fees are very expensive.
Hmm. Yeah. Nah, absolutely. And you're right with the children, there's yeah, you can plan, but obviously, as you said, it can also be a result of just, happy marriage and all of that stuff as well. But I do think, with the point that you mentioned on the house, obviously there is something as buying too much house, which tends to be the case a lot of the time. But that bit when you said stress testing as well, let's be honest, a lot of us we see that because we see it even if we get like a mortgage pack or so, and let's say worst case scenario, this is how much you will pay, but deep down, we always
Yeah.
say, oh, that's not gonna happen. So we just move on vibes and just hope that everything will be okay.
Yeah, that's very much true. That's very, very much true. But particularly if you're going to take out a large mortgage, the bigger the number, the more the percentage has a bigger impact.
Mm,
Yeah. So, look, he went from 2000 to 3,200.
hmm,
That's huge in terms of the actual number, the nominal amount, and that can be life changing. And remember, even when you're earning £125,000 a year, that might sound good on paper. But the one thing we haven't mentioned is the tax
yeah.
implications. Okay. The tax implications, the moment you start earning over 100K, it gets really, really techy, let's put it that way.
Mm,
You start to even lose your personal allowance. Also, you also lose out on child benefit and all
yeah,
these
yeah,
things. So it's a high income doesn't solve all your problems. In fact, sometimes
yeah.
it brings further problems.
So that £19,000 in nursery fees, they were literally coughing that up from their own money, basically.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of
Yeah.
money. And in the text, it doesn't actually tell us if his partner is working as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
all it really, oh, sorry, go on.
no, no, that's what I was
I
going to
was
say.
saying, all it really shows is everything that he feels is contributing to the debt and stuff. It doesn't actually talk about other bits in his lifestyle, whether he owns a car, whether they spend too much on this and that. It really is kind of geared towards, you get what I mean? It's kind of geared
Yeah,
towards
yeah.
highlighting some of the key things that are is putting him in debt, which are usually things that are okay, yeah, mortgage and a kid, etc. But it doesn't go into detail about stuff outside of that.
Well, this is what I was saying about like a lot of the time when you start earning a high income, you adopt a certain lifestyle and you may be able to sustain that lifestyle because your income's pretty high. But I think the phrase I love to use is how close are you to the edge? Because it does only take for a life event or for some sort of something to change for you then to start really feeling the impact. And we can see it here as a double-edged sword. The mortgage goes up by a very high amount, and then also you have a life event where you have a child, and all of a sudden you've gone from a lifestyle that you might have been able to service to actually really, really struggling. You can be very close to the edge.
Hmm. So I say this from Jack's for this chap called Matthew, who got onto the property ladder very young and got a small Airbnb empire. So again,
Yeah,
hopefully that can continue to grow as well. But some life events have happened. It hits us. It does hit us. And he does say in this article that financially I did everything right, to quote
yeah.
him. So Jack's, my question is, did he?
So, I mean, you know the answer to that already. No. But I do want to talk on this because sometimes, and this is sometimes the ideas and thought process that we may have that are incorrect when it comes to personal finances and the management of money, which is we focus on our income, and if we are increasing our income and we have a high income, and then maybe we watched a few YouTube videos and we want to start a property portfolio. I laugh because that's something I wanted to do when I was young, and I know
Hmm.
you remember that very well, Peter.
We remember the conversation, but that's another day. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but
Yeah,
you
no, no,
you,
absolutely
you
not.
remember the context.
Yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with it. But sometimes you are turned on by accumulation of businesses and look, sometimes it is to even boost the ego. I say that personally. I remember saying I wanted to buy 10
Mm,
properties, not because of anything, but because I wanted to be the man,
mm,
the guy, the provider who has 10 properties and everyone looks up to you. But a lot of the time, we think we are doing the right thing if we are earning more money and we are starting businesses and all that kind of stuff. And it is good, as I said earlier, it is part of the formula. But I do find Peter, I'll say this as well. In recent times, I'm even seeing more content online on, let's say, Instagram and TikTok and these places where a lot of some influencers are saying, "Hey, why don't cut your costs? Why are you cutting your costs? No one needs to cut your costs." And then they'll talk
Mm,
about the coffee. Oh, you don't need to cut down on your coffee and all these things, because the most important thing is you need to increase your income. You need to increase
mm,
your income. And whilst I understand it, and I do agree when you are managing your money that increasing your income is a very important part of that formula, you can only ever cut your costs so low, particularly when you are trying to get out of debt, etc. But I think we have to be very careful as to where the narrative is coming from
mm,
and why we don't want to adopt that kind of like sacrificial ideology, or actually, that reducing that instant gratification and actually delaying gratification. Moving away from these principles in the name of just earning more money and starting businesses left, right, and center. And they say, hey, this business is easy to start, Amazon FBA, or and actually, Airbnb businesses are becoming even more popular. So I'm not even surprised that was something that he started.
mm.
These businesses are not always immediately profitable. And even when they are, what we can understand from this situation is cash management is very, very key. Very, very key. And having liquidity on hand is very important. And managing risk is also very, very important too. So yeah, Peter, I said all of that to say, he may have felt that he was doing the right thing by earning more money and starting businesses, but it's only one part of the story. And the chances are he probably didn't look at the other side of that formula, which is, hey, what are my liabilities and are they actually sensible? What does my balance sheet look like ultimately? And what happens if I cannot produce the same level of cash flow for a short period of time? And ultimately, that's the mistake that I think he made.
Hmm. Wow, 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 wow. Now, of course, I'm gonna have to ask, what can he, but also us, regardless of what we're earning, do to actually avoid these type of situations. Because yeah, again, as I said, like this particular salary was a bit of a unique salary for the majority of the UK and comparable relatively across parts of the Western world, so to speak. But it'll be good to understand what can we do to avoid these type of situations. But Jax, before we do that, we're gonna give a shout out to where we're getting listeners from in different places of the world, and this town is called Naaldwijk, which is a town in Netherlands.
You sound like you really pronounced that properly this time.
Yeah, no, no, no. Just because I said it with confidence and with a bit of tang, it doesn't mean I said it properly.
Yeah, well, I trust you. I trust. It sounds like you sounded properly.
I
Welcome to
know,
the
but
Woke
yeah.
Finance Podcast. You are here with myself, Jax, and the co-host Peter. And on this podcast, we talk about all things finance and all things finance related. If you want to know more about what we do, because we do serve in a community, you can head over to www.wokefinance.co.uk. That's www.wokefinance.co.uk. Make sure you sign up to our mailing list, because we will be sending out newsletters, keeping you updated with all the amazing things that we are doing. If you want to engage with us on social media as well, we are predominantly on three platforms and maybe expanding, but ultimately we are on LinkedIn, we are on TikTok, and we are also on Instagram. If you search for Woke Finance, you will be sure to find us. But welcome to the episode. I hope you are enjoying and gaining tons of value.
Fantastic. Massive shout out to our listeners over there and all over the world. We see you and appreciate you. Now, Jax, finally, what can, regardless of the salary we're on, and when we're planning for salary, or I keep saying salary, income increases, and lifestyle, etc., what can we do to avoid these type of situations? Because this could easily, very easily be any one of us.
Oh, it's common.
And it is
It
very much
is.
one of us.
Yeah, it very
This
much
example
is.
we've been going through is just relative to his salary, but
Yes.
this is the case for a lot of us.
This is the case, and I remember I've done a lot of financial coaching with individuals and families, and
Mm,
actually, I have found a common theme for people that are high income earners. And I think this is actually very common for those who tend to earn a good income. the thing that often gets them is these events. And I think one of the themes is actually, for example, having children and having children back to back,
Mm,
right? So that's
mm,
actually a common one and actually not financially planning for it. Now, in order to answer your question, for these specific scenarios, it does come down to financial planning. Money is not the most important thing in life. We know that. Relationships are more important. My relationship with God is more important. My health is more important. And just self-actualization is more important. But the thing about money is that it affects everything that we do deem to be important. So actually, every decision that we tend to make has a financial implication. And for that reason, we can't turn a blind eye to that. When we are thinking about building a family, which is under the relationship segment, we do have to make we do need to have an understanding that there are financial implications. And so I would say having children, although it's a family decision, it is also a financial decision. And what you can do is start financially preparing for it. Um, Similarly, we talk about having emergency funds in place. These can always kick in when things happen. So I would say having a fully funded emergency fund will go a long way to protecting you should things happen that you didn't plan for. But ultimately, financial planning and budgeting is at the heart of all financial success. And though you cannot absolutely plan for every eventuality, you can plan for some of these bigger capital outlays, such as having children, etc.
mm. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And Jax, I mean, this person is in this circumstance. Any tips before I let you go in terms of for maybe those that have found themselves very deep in right now, in
Yeah,
these
yeah.
circumstances?
Well, I think he mentions in the text something that I would first and foremost would really want to address if I was coaching him, which is he says, I thought it was my job to provide for the family and keep us stable. I felt a lot of shame. And I do think this is a very, very common experience, particularly for a lot of men.
Mm,
And that is something I would want to address first. Because if you feel shame, I'm embarrassed, like you've let the team down, sometimes we can end up remaining in that state for longer than we need to, rather than taking action and actually moving forward. I do think it is extremely important that we give ourselves grace and compassion when it comes to these situations, because even though I mentioned financial planning and all these things, that can help you and take you so far. There are still life events that can take place that you cannot always plan for. His situation is common, but it did all happen at once and at the same time as well. So there is a level of being unlucky as well. Because he also mentions the fact that he had a second child. There were two children, and then
mm.
the mortgage as well. So I would definitely want to address that area first. To maybe sometimes counseling helps, and then we can start talking about putting in a plan in place to actually come out of the situation over the long term. I would also say that sometimes these things are temporary, they're not always long lasting. So it might be that for the next few years, you may need to, what's the word?
Cut down.
Tie your seatbelt, buckle down. That's the
Yeah.
word. Yeah. Maybe rather than the 3 holidays a year, we take that down to one. Maybe do one holiday and one staycation, for example. So you may just need to knuckle down for the next few years and get through this period whilst the children are still young. And it is what it is. It is what it is. And then maybe do a bit more financial coaching for him and his family to understand how to maybe put structures in place so that even if stuff like this happens again, the impact is not so devastating.
Love it, love it, love it, man. That was good. That was good just to break down. For our listeners, if you want us to maybe do a few more reaction or these type of reaction podcasts to real life situations, man, because we all go through it all. Some of us share with others, some of us suffer in silence. So it might be these type of podcast episodes are the only time that you might actually hear a conversation about these particular situations, and hopefully it can be of some use and helpful. So yeah, let us know, listeners, if you want more of that. Jax, what do you think about these type of structures?
No, I really like them. I really like them because these are real life situations. We've spent
Mm,
the past 6 years providing you with as much education and information as possible. I think actually this is something we probably will do much more of in 2026 and beyond. We're really looking at real life situations, reacting to them, talking about what we think they can do. But also, I think I would encourage the audience, the listeners, to send in their questions, send in their scenarios, and we will definitely spend some episodes answering our listeners' questions and responding to their different scenarios. Of course, what we do talk about on this podcast is not to be seen as financial advice or some sort of recommendation or investment recommendation, but what we can do is give you our opinion and how we would handle the situation if we were in that situation.
love it, love it, love it, man. On that note, to our listeners, remember all,
Stay
stay
woke.
woke.